going on vacation.
But where? The real question is, where?
Last time I talked about Family Guy, I went over and discussed one of the worst ratings traps they've ever had, being the time they thought it would be a good move to kill off Brian Griffin, then bring him back 2 episodes later with the excuse of trying to teach a heartfelt message. But would you be surprised to know that that's not even the worst thing Family Guy has ever done? It's weird because undoubtedly the biggest event that Family Guy has ever had kinda came and went. I rarely see anyone talk about this. I myself forgot it even existed for the longest time. And it was the massively anticipated crossover episode, Simpsons Guy. I really think this is the worst thing Family Guy has ever done. Not because it had the worst writing, not because it had the worst message, the worst whatever really, but because it had to go and take The Simpsons down with it. Now, it's no secret that The Simpsons has really decreased in quality over the years, but it was never at Family Guy's level of awfulness. But why was this episode even made? Why wait until both shows had long lost relevancy to produce what was one of the most anticipated crossovers in animation? Well, that in and of itself should be the answer, but let's look a little deeper. Both star a lower middle class family with an idiot father, nagging wife, son and daughter, baby, and pet. Almost seems like one show is ripping off the other. Fans of these shows notice the glaring similarities and all ask the same question. When are they going to do a crossover? At first it seemed like it would never happen, given The Simpsons creator Matt Groening's thoughts on crossovers.
Uh-oh, I smell another cheap cartoon crossover.
Bart Simpson, meet Jay Sherman the Critic.
When the show did a crossover with The Critic, Matt was outraged as he thought it ruined the world building the show had established, and even removed his name from the episode credits and refused to be on the DVD commentary. But now here we are. He let them do it. What a mistake that was. Not much is known about the development of this episode or why Matt approved of letting the Family Guy staff handle the Simpsons characters, but my guess is that at this point he really doesn't give a fuck what they do with the show. Homer gets an iPad? Sure, whatever. Bart becomes a gamer? Sounds epic, leave me alone. Fortnite dances? Fucking piss off, who cares?
Well, Bart, how does it feel to be trolled, memed, jiffed, and dare I say, pwned?
So the episode released and was quickly forgotten about. But is there a reason for that? Yes. Let's look into the crossover and see why I think it's the worst thing to come out of either of the shows. If you saw my Brian Griffin video, do you remember when I said most, if not all, Family Guy episodes start up with a 5-minute mini episode before something happens at the end that kicks off the actual story? And it's extremely likely that they would do this as filler because the writers don't think the main plot could fill a whole 22 minutes, no matter how many pointless cutaway gags they squeeze in. Well, they wouldn't do that for a crossover episode like this, would they? Think of the countless possibilities for stories and gags they could have. God, they must have had to cut a ton of stuff out from how many ideas they had. I'm sure the writers were just oozing with creative juices. Alright, that's enough, you see where I'm going with this. The episode starts with a 5-minute storyline about Peter starting up an offensive comic strip, leaving to them leaving Quahog until the mob calms down. And I get they'd need a reason for the Griffins to go to Springfield, but the episode could have easily just started with the Griffins driving and Lois saying,
"Oh, Peter, I can't believe you got his ex out from town."
Or fuck it, just have something simple like,
"Oh, Peter, I can't wait to go on a vacation."
It's so bizarre to me that they waste so much time with the Simpsons crossover without the Simpsons. And since this episode was double the length of an average Family Guy episode, it gave them the ability to insert 2 plots that get forgotten about for something else. So the reason the Griffins wind up in Springfield is because their car gets stolen right beside the residence of the Simpsons, and after meeting Homer he offers to let them stay at his house and help Peter find his car. Until they decide to drop that storyline halfway through, when they realised all it led to was extremely uncomfortable scene. And so they start up the real plot, being that it's revealed the beer from Family Guy is a direct rip-off of the beer from The Simpsons. Pretty clever and subtle commentary. They have a few side plots for the other family members, like Lisa trying to find something Meg is good at and raise her confidence. Until she then goes out of her way to destroy her confidence. Brian and Chris, it's obvious they had no ideas for what to do with Chris losing Santa's little helper. Then, in the next scene he just comes back. Stu becoming obsessed with trying to impress Bart for some reason, and Lois and Marge, you know, they're there. This story just comes off as incredibly rushed, with each of these side plots only getting 2 or 3 really short scenes before wrapping up in incredibly unsatisfying ways. Let's use the Meg and Lisa one for example. So after many off-screen attempts of Lisa trying to find something Meg is good at, she then learns that the one thing she is good at is the thing that she's good at, playing saxophone. But Lisa tells her that she isn't actually good at playing it to avoid her ego being shattered. But then in their next scene, Lisa reveals to Meg that she is a great sax player and gives her one. Where was the progression here? And that happens for all of these subplots. Even though it's 44 minutes, they really rush through all these stories when they could have easily fleshed them out more if they just cut that comic strip shit from the beginning. And to talk about the plot of the Family Guy beer being a ripoff, representing how Family Guy is a ripoff of The Simpsons, it just comes off as really defensive, honestly. With the conclusion to it all being, well, The Simpsons ripped off the Flintstones. Even though those two shows are barely anything alike.
If you ask me, neither of these beers is wholly original. They're both pale imitations of my favorite beer, Bud Rock.
It ends up looking like the whole point of this crossover was so that Family Guy could justify its own existence. It seems weird to devote a massive part of your crossover episode to shitting on the show you're crossing over with.
You know, when I first met you, I thought, hey, I love this guy. This is the funniest guy I've ever met. But now, I think I speak for all of us when I say, I am over The Simpsons.
There are tons of jokes that are just, lol, The Simpsons is so bad now and Family Guy is the better alternative. And it becomes really obvious that this was primarily written by the Family Guy staff, if that weren't already painfully obvious with how desperately they try to be cool and edgy. There was controversy about this special before it even aired, when the promo showed Stewie making a rape joke towards Moe's sister.
Moe's tavern? Hello, Moe? Your sister's being raped.
And I think that's when many people realised, while these two shows seem almost identical in concept, they are nothing alike. So many people say the concept for these shows and assume they're both identical, and while yes, the setup to both shows are similar, their style of storytelling, writing, and comedy are completely different. You can tell just from how the characters interact with each other that something feels off. It's really evident from the first scene where the Griffins meet Homer.
But try it like this. Donut.
Donut.
It's so on the nose about referencing each of the show's quotes and character traits that it comes off as cringy more than anything. Family Guy relies mostly on shock value at this point, which works for the show. There are people out there who like it surprisingly, but it does not work for The Simpsons at all. Seeing things like Homer drowning himself in gasoline, Stewie torturing Nelson, Meg showing Lisa scars from where she cut herself, and I could go on. These situations just don't fit with the Simpsons cast, and I really think it should have been in the Family Guy staff's best interest to respect how The Simpsons is, and understand that they would not have an overly sexualized scene of Homer washing cars with licensed music playing in the background that I can't play for copyright reasons. And none of that even compares, none of that even comes close to the chicken fight. Alright, so the chicken fight started as some random one-off gag in an early Family Guy episode that was pretty funny and creative. But in regular Family Guy fashion, they've beaten this gag into the ground again and again and again until it now has no impact at all anymore. So of course they had to shove this into the crossover, with an 8-minute long fight against Homer and Peter. That's about as exciting as those shitty crossover flash fighting games. I can't believe someone out there thought it would be a good idea to dedicate a fifth of their episode to a fucking fight scene, and not even a good one at that. It's just unpleasant to watch, and I'm so surprised that Matt Groening looked at this and said, oh yeah, this is good, air it. All the animation budget was clearly put into this scene, and that's not a good thing. It's a perfect example of something being over-animated, with things like Homer's eye popping out and getting hit across the face with a shard of glass being so gruesome and hard to sit through. And the way it ends is honestly the biggest fuck you they could have done to The Simpsons, with the shot holding on Homer's crushed body with blood splattered everywhere. Although I guess it's kind of funny that the worst part of the episode is immediately followed up by the only good part of the episode.
I just wanted to make you laugh and cry. You see, I'm a family guy.
I understand. I'm a The Simpsons.
And while I'm not sure why or how Matt Groening was convinced to let this crossover take place exactly, other cast members like Harry Shearer were able to smell the rat more easily and wanted no part in it, with his only comment on it being, matter and antimatter, which is why we didn't hear any voice performances from many classic Simpsons characters like Ned Flanders or Mr. Burns, which not many Simpsons fans would know about as the special wasn't even that successful when you consider it was hyped up for years. It didn't even receive as many viewers as the Simpsons episode that aired before it, although it did pretty well by Family Guy standards, with it being the highest rated episode since season 9. Critical response seemed pretty mixed, with many people also saying these shows just didn't blend well together. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Matt Groening looked back on this crossover with shame, as overall it's an unfunny, horribly paced and hard to watch episode that came out way too late. And even though this special was awful, I feel like it was almost necessary to show us that while yes, The Simpsons is extremely mediocre nowadays, at least it's nothing like Family Guy. If you ever want to experience this episode, you're honestly better off watching the parody animation on YouTube, which funnily enough has more views on it than the original ratings for this episode in a tenth of its runtime.
Your creator is TV's most beloved animation visionary.
Seth MacFarlane?
Ah!